Let me ask, what's the most accessible city in the world?
The Emerald City.
The Emerald City.
Tallinn, Estonia.
Tallinn, Estonia. Anybody else got a nomination?
Switzerland, Zurich.
Zurich? Okay. Anybody else?
Celebration, Florida.
Hi, Alexandra. I didn't see it.
Celebration, Florida.
Celebration, Florida.
It was designed to be exclusive. No.
Well, I'm going to reveal the answer in a few minutes. Let me ask you this series of questions. By show of hands, I'm going to ask you to rate the accessibility of Missoula.
Are we talking about the built environment?
Any feature you want. Just overall general rating of accessibility. 0, not accessible at all. 1, a few places are accessible, but most don't even really bother. 2, most places meet the letter of the law. And 3, it's the most accessible city on earth. So by show of hands, who rates it 0? So at least some, huh? How about number 1? A few places accessible? All right. 2, most places meet the letter of the law. It's the most accessible city on earth. How many vote for that? 1. Okay. Just keep that in mind. And George, your question is a good one. And I'm going to address that in a second, too. So the European Union has a contest annually for the most accessible city in Europe. In 2011, the first award was given to Sevilla, Spain. 2012, Salzburg, Austria. 2013, Berlin, Germany, just announced in December. In the United States, Christopher and Dana Reeves Foundation lists the most wheelchair-friendly cities in the United States. Seattle, Washington's number 1.
Emerald City.
Emerald City, good. Down to number 20, Atlanta, Georgia. Most accessible websites. Here's a list of the top 10, according to someone who is, in 2004, who ran a bunch of his favorite websites through a search engine optimization process, an accessibility engine, and rated them, and then ranked ordered them. Chevrolet is the most accessible website in this case. Nikki, in 2004, said, a visually impaired friend of mine told me that www.sky.countryuk was pretty good. But how do they tell? And what difference does it make? The European Union is basically a self-report tool, maybe a self-promotion tool by cities over 50,000. It's basically, what kind of policies do you have in place? The United States, the Christopher Dana Reeves Foundation, uses available data heavily skewed toward weather to rank order the accessibility or livability for wheelchairs. So most of the cities that are on the top 20 are in the south. Website rating software has been applied to personally selected favorite websites. Mostly it's word of mouth. So what's wrong with that? Society invests a significant amount of resources into monitoring conditions of importance, from soil moisture to air quality. The Forest Service monitors snowpack to determine what the moisture content will be so that they can predict spring runoff, flooding, and crop planting season. They also monitor not only here on the ground and digging in the snow, they monitor from space to look at fire, spread of vegetation, and so on. The Environmental Protection Agency monitors the air and water, land to detect pollution. All of that data is fed into policy development. The American Society for Civil Engineering grades the infrastructure of the United States and sets priorities for change and renovation. But there is no such program for monitoring the accessibility of our communities, a primary determinant of quality of life and health of citizens with disabilities. Drew Batavia was quoted after the passage of the ADA as saying, the ADA was passed without documentation of need, and no baseline data exists to assess the implementation of the ADA. Why bother? We all have a sense, we could all judge the accessibility of Missoula a few minutes ago, but understanding changing patterns of accessibility is an important goal as understanding the health of our forests, our air, and our water quality, and the safety of our bridges. Why do it? Currently, accessibility monitored using a legal framework rather than a scientific model. We know the number and types of complaints, the resolution, how many were filed and how many were resolved, but we don't know how many curb cuts are out there. We don't know the actual level of accessibility of public places or businesses, how different places differ from one another, what the priority should be, how to set it, and where to locate those accessible places. One wonders what's been going on. How is it that we should be monitoring accessibility? So, this table shows across the top the number of different settings, some examples of settings in which accessibility is important. Business, government facilities, public schools, healthcare, websites, transportation, private homes. Down the side are dimensions of accessibility: architectural, communication, sensory, cognitive, information, and exposure sensitivity. Think chemical exposures. The X's here, about 7 of them, indicate where there are established measures that can estimate the accessibility of those different settings. So how do we measure accessibility? We go out and look, and we can use random sampling techniques when we have large numbers of units to analyze. So for example, if you wanted to answer the question, how accessible are the websites and home pages at the University of Montana? You could go out and look at each one, but there are a lot of them. If you were looking at the accessibility of websites in Missoula, there are even more. You can't look at all of them, but you can sample them randomly and estimate the number that are accessible and inaccessible. So, let me ask again, what is the most accessible city on earth? I'm going to argue Missoula, Montana is the most accessible city on earth. How do I know? Because we went out and looked, and we have data, and we can give Missoula a grade of B-. We can tell you the level of accessibility of city parking, pathway from parking places, points of businesses. We can tell you the accessibility of the entryways into businesses. We can tell you the distinction between city-maintained infrastructure and private infrastructure. How many think the city is more likely than private businesses to maintain accessible pathways? 1. How many people think businesses do a better job than government? Nobody. Businesses do better than the city. They maintain their accessibility. That's the importance of having data. Because the impression that some people would have is exactly the kind of impression many of you have. The city, the county, it's part of the government, they're going to follow the law. Businesses have the reputation of being recalcitrant. The data say otherwise. Is this good enough just to know? Can Missoula do better? Who's going to take the leadership in maintaining Missoula's grade of B-? Who's going to set the standard to see if we can get an A? Can Missoula become an accessible community of excellence? ACE. Can Missoula ace the test? Groucho and his brothers, they thank you very much.